Hi, this is Neil Cole from Conversion Uplift. Today I'm going to talk to you about how to configure the new Google tag and the accompanying new variables. So you may have noticed recently in GTM this message: your Google Analytics GA4 configuration tags are now Google tags and have gained new capabilities including settings variables. Your existing measurement has not changed and no action is required. And that is partly correct, but to get the most out of these new tags and variables you do need to make some changes. So let's go to our GTM container where we can look at the changes. So we're in our Conversion Uplift GTM container and we can just use the search icon to find the Google tag if you've got a lot of tags. Even though we've not called it the Google tag, it comes up because that's now the type name. So the first thing we can do is change the name from config tag to Google tag. If we click into the tag, we can see a few changes. So they've added send page view, which in this case is false. This was automatically added by Google. This indicates that no page view is sent with this tag, and that's correct in our case because we have separate page view event. So if it says true, that means that your setting was originally to fire a page view with the config tag. And then if you've got server-side GTM, you'd also see a server container URL here and the endpoint URL that the server side is being sent to. So this will automatically be added if you're using GTM server side and you configured it as so. Okay, and then we've got some other parameters that we already had on our config tag. Now, the first thing I would actually look at changing proper is the tag ID. So you may have a measurement ID in here, but I'd always recommend that this is changed to a variable. So if you've got the measurement ID, I would create a constant variable in most cases. We use a lookup table because we have more than one environment. So we have a staging site as well as a live site. So use the lookup table if you have more than one environment. The next thing to look at is the configuration settings variable, which is here. So it will, unless you've already created one, it will show none, and the other option will be a new variable. So we want to create a new variable because we want to easily add the configuration settings variable to any Google tags that we might use. So this is down to preference. If you have a website and a GTM container that will only ever have one Google tag, you could just leave them here. But anyway, I'll show you how to create a new variable. You just click on new variable and then give it a name. So we'll call it the configuration settings. And we'll give it I'll call it a G tag. You could create a new folder if you want. Right, next thing is to click into it. So you can then add parameters. So we want to send a page view, and it comes up as a predefined parameter, so you just click on it, and we want to put false because we already have a separate page view event. And then we've got some for the UTM parameters, so we'll put campaign. We've got campaign source. Now we just need to search for our variable. And we've got campaign medium. So if it's a predefined variable, it'll come up automatically, which makes it easier to complete. So that's the UTM medium. And then finally we've got campaign name. And we'll just get our variable. So if that's everything, then you just need to save, and it will automatically be added to your Google tag. So we could now remove these parameters in the configuration parameter table on the tag itself, otherwise we'd be duplicating them. So we'll just remove those. Obviously, if you're using GTM server-side, you would also include the server-side parameter. Google have produced a list of valid parameters for the configuration settings variable here, and we'll share this below the video. So you can see these are more global parameters like campaign ID, campaign name, as we've already mentioned, content group, cookies. So you've got cookie prefix there. So if you're doing a roll-up property, you could add the cookie prefix to your different Google tags and their configuration variables. And you've got server, container, as we mentioned, user ID, user properties. So those are all the predefined parameters. Back in the Google tag here, the next thing to look at is the event settings variable. So again, this will be automatically set to none unless you've already created one. So if you click on the none, it will show whether you've got a shared event settings variable. We've set one up already, so if you haven't, you'd use the new variable again, but let's just go to that. We've set it up. So if we click on the I, it actually opens up the variable so you can see what we've added. So these are all parameters that we want to send with individual events as well as with the Google tag. So it makes it a lot easier if you add them to this variable to add them to individual events, because you can just simply add the variable rather than actually individually. In the past you would have had to have added each of these parameters to each event, which could take a lot of time if you've got a lot of events. So it certainly makes it much easier. The other thing to look at is that this event settings variable also has some user properties that you can add. So we've currently got the client ID in our Google tag. Well, we can add it to the variable here. So we'll put custom client ID, get the variable, so we're going to use this one, and then we can save that, and that will automatically be added as a user parameter to the events that we add the shared event settings variable to. So we can now remove this because we don't need it, because we've added it to the variable. Again, Google have produced documentation on the valid parameters for the event settings variable. So you can see here it's got things like language and content ID, content type, country, currency, method, payment type, shipping, tax, user properties, value. So it's got a fair range of parameters that you can add, but you can also create your own. So for instance, the user properties, you can define that yourself. So these are just predefined. Doesn't mean you can't create your own custom parameters to add to the variable. Now that we've added both variables to our Google tag, we can now save the Google tag, and we can look at individual events and how we can configure those differently now that we've got the Google tag. So let's search for our GA4 events. Okay, we call all our GA4 events GA4 event. We start with that prefix, so it means it's easy to find them. So the first one here is the 404 visibility. So we click into the individual events, we can now click into the tag and we can add the shared event settings, which we've already done here in this instance. So that will ensure that all the parameters in the shared event settings, including any user properties, are are set and captured when the event is fired. So there's no need, for instance, to use the user properties now within the event itself, because we've added any necessary user properties to the event settings variable. So that's already done. So we come out of that. So we just need to go through each event and just check that we've got the event settings variable. And if you're not sure, say just click on the eye to see that you've got the right one if you've got more than one. So we seem to have added it to some of our events. So this one hasn't, so we'll need to go through each event and just simply select whatever you've called it, the shared event settings in this instance, and then just save it. Let's go to our page view event. Just check that that is set up correctly. There you go. So here we've got all the event parameters set up in the tag itself, because that's the way it had to be set up before the Google tag came along. So provided we've got all these in the new event setting variable, then we don't need to have them here. We can just add them via the shared event settings variable. So let's just check that. Location, page location. So yeah. So we just need to check that we've got everything. So yeah, I don't think I've got original location. So maybe that's one to add. Just check. That's the original location. So I'll just add this parameter. And we can, we've also got the customer client D there, so that's good. So if that's on the page view, we can remove that, which it is. So we don't need this anymore, so we can remove that. And we can remove all these. Customer session ID, was that on the original one? Let's just check. No, it wasn't. So we could add that if we want. So we just save that. So we now can remove all these parameters from the tag itself. So it certainly tidies up the tags. We fire the Google tag before the page view event. So if you're using this approach, then it's important that you set your tag sequence. If you're firing it without a tag sequence, just make sure the Google tag is always fired early, so on initialization or consent initialization, and that the page view event is fired after that. So one way of ensuring that the page view event is always fired after the Google tag is set up a sequence like we've done here, so that we've said fire a tag before this event, which is the page view event, and we set it to the Google tag. So that ensures consistency, because it's really important the Google tag is sent first before any page view event. And that's why with single page applications, it's important not to rely on enhanced measurement within the GA4 console to fire page views on history changes. It's important really to control your page view events when they fire within GTM, so that you can ensure the Google tag automatically fires before the page view event. So we'll just save that. The other thing to consider is that whenever a Google tag fires, it will overwrite any previous Google tag with the same measurement ID. Below this video, I've also shared a link to this really excellent article by Simo on the Google tag implementation. So to summarize, when you set up your Google tag, ensure that you fire as early as possible on either initialization or consent initialization. If necessary, you can set up a tag sequence to ensure that it always fires before your page view event. So you would need to go to your page view event and set that in that event. So create your configuration settings variable and add the more global parameters to that. Also create your event settings variable to add all the parameters that you normally send with events, with all your events, that is. And that allows you to remove any parameters in the event tags themselves that are in the event settings variable. And remember to add user scope parameters to the event settings variable as well. Thanks again for watching, and I'll be posting more videos shortly.